All right. Well, this is a big day for both of us. I know we've been talking about it for a few months right now, but this is the first episode of Going Offsides, brought to you by the Lacrosse Collective. Well, let's get started with some background. I'm Ryan Kuhn. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, born and raised. I'm living out in the Midwest right now. That's kind of how I got brought together with your co-host, Nick. I'm currently the head women's lacrosse coach at Heidelberg University, with previous stops at Shore and Wading River High School, where we were the 2019 New York State champions. Did 5 years at Lincoln Memorial University, started the program at Division II school down in the South Atlantic Conference, and got my head coaching career started at the Defiance College in Defiance, Ohio.
All right, and I'm Nick Zeroya. I'm the current head men's coach at the Green Hills School in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Before that, I've had stops at Concordia University, where I had my first college head coaching job. Before that, stops at the University of Michigan as a film coordinator, at Detroit Mercy as a director of operations. The year that we won the MAC, and went on to play Notre Dame in the first round, where we almost played spoiler, but it was funny to see Coach Corrigan lose his mind as always. But yeah, we decided to start this blog this podcast along with our blog, which is mostly about coaching and coaching lacrosse. But this podcast will be slightly different. This will be mostly about lacrosse, but you'll see us go on topics like anything in the sports world, whether it be NCAA issues, COVID, anything that we can think of, we can talk about. And the goal is to do this on a weekly basis.
I think the big thing the reason we wanted to start this was because, obviously there's a lot of podcasts out there, but we feel like with our backgrounds and kind of some of the things that we've gone through, it's definitely a voice to some of the other coaches that might be going through some similar things. Some of the topics that we're going to touch on might not necessarily be some of the bigger topics that are going on in the lacrosse world or sports in general. But it's some of the stuff that maybe coaches at the lower end of Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO, high school, anywhere in the country that are going through. And, it's going to be important topics that, we're going to kind of jump all over the place. We're going to have somewhat of a parameter to the episodes, but we might jump off and kind of do a bunch of different things. So it's really exciting, something that we've been talking about for a really long time, and hopefully everybody who's listening gets a lot out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a couple times a week, text every day about lacrosse related topics, rumors, everything that we hear that's going on in the lacrosse world. And we decided, why not just take basically our phone calls and turn them into a podcast, because we're already doing the content. So maybe somebody else will get a kick out of some of the things that we have to say. So, and then we chose the name Going Offsides because it is a lacrosse podcast, but we're definitely going to be going over the line, as it were, and talk about some things that aren't lacrosse related, but still kind of relate back to lacrosse in some way. So let's get started with that, and let's talk about, let's go big, and let's talk about the PLL right now.
Great topic. Love it. Love what they're doing. And I promise to you, to our listeners, to my co-host, I will do my best to not be a typical Long Islander, and every other word out of my mouth is a 4-letter word. I will do my best to keep it PG so that all the listeners, even your young kids, can enjoy it. But back to the topic. Right now it is June 11th, and we are about a month or so away from PLL Island. Today is a big day. They just announced where they're going to have PLL Island, and I couldn't be more excited. I think it's going to be great for the PLL. I think it's going to be great for the sport. I think the location is perfect because it's not too far away from Utah. It's in the state of Utah, but when I say Utah, the university, the Utes, based on, the success that they've had in their small sample size, I think that this is going to be huge for the growth in Utah, the mountain region, and specifically out west. I think this is going to be huge. And I think, even though we're going through some COVID type issues with college athletics across the board, I think that this is going to open up a lot of eyes out there to some athletic administrators, athletic boosters, and we're all hoping and we all want the same thing. We want to see this sport grow. I'm hoping that some athletic administrators and some boosters are really going to pay close attention, and hopefully with the product they're putting on the field, maybe this will lead to some more programs out that way, and maybe some more programs in those Power 5 conferences. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think the choice, it makes sense. The other places that they were looking at, IMG Academy, the Lawrenceville School, Florida was getting kind of crowded when it came to professional sports. And I think that Lawrenceville School, it made sense geographically with where a lot of these guys live and work. But I also think it becomes kind of a nightmare trying to keep everybody kind of quarantined and in that bubble when they know a couple hundred people that live within a half hour of that location. So I think that they put themselves almost on like a cultural island as well, in terms of the only people that know people in Utah really are a couple guys from the Archers that coach at the U. So I'm pretty sure that didn't hurt the case. I read about it, and Rabel was saying how they chose the location because it's set up real well. Real Salt Lake, that's where they play. They're good for broadcasting. They're good for locker rooms, for meeting rooms, for everything. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It's nice to see it in the West. Plus, that's only 2-hour flight, hour and a half flight from LA, where everyone's headquartered for the league office. So I'm sure that doesn't hurt, that it's pretty close for the league, and it'll be interesting. Like you said, it's nice. Too bad we can't have fans, because that would be able to show the people in Utah care about lacrosse. But it is what it is. It's an island.
I think it's going to be huge. I think that it really is a great place. I've never been there. My brother has, but I don't know too much about that area. But I know based on what I've seen and heard, it's absolutely beautiful. So, and I think the climate there is going to be conducive to success over a 3 to 4 week period where these guys are going to be training and playing. So I think it's going to be awesome. I mean, you mentioned IMG and the Lawrenceville School. I think you're spot on when it comes to specifically the Lawrenceville School with where that's located. I mean, with everything going on with COVID, I don't think you could have it anywhere close to the tri-state area, with that being kind of the epicenter of everything. And as far as IMG goes, with the NBA probably going to, I think they did say that they're going to the wide world of sports. He's putting another thing down there. I don't know if that's probably the best way to go.
Yeah,
so
don't quote me on this, but I heard rumor that the WNBA might be using the IMG Academy. So
that's what I heard as well. I heard that yesterday.
So that might have also officially nixed that one. Maybe made a hard decision a little easier for Rabels. So speaking on, let's keep the COVID thing going. So we've done a couple articles on Lax All Stars about COVID and how it's affected everything. And we've seen a couple programs fold because, I don't know if a lot of people, the average listener knows this, but lacrosse is a luxury sport in almost every athletic department. In the Ivy League, it's got the pedigree. It's ingrained in the athletic department for close to 100 years. But at most schools, it's relatively new. It's a luxury. It's not a sport that you need at a lot of schools, especially at the D1 level. Now, at the D3, at NAI level, obviously, it's for the most part a profit generating, a net positive for the school, assuming that you don't have a roster of 14, 15. So, it's a big deal. These programs on the edge that are hovering under 20 people a year, 20 kids on the roster a year, these isolated schools, maybe in Texas or Arkansas, Mississippi. I mean, there's only one school in Louisiana, I think. So these places, I wouldn't expect to see it being added soon. And if it was recently added, they might put a hold on this whole thing, because, travel, as you're a coach, you know what it's like to be told to cut the budget. I've been told by some D1 coaches that the school asked them to cut their budget by 20%. So travel is one of the biggest ways to be cutting that expense. And also, what was it? The CAA said, you don't have to play anybody in the conference this year in the regular season if you don't want to, which really helps with the travel costs.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see it across the board. I think it's not just a lacrosse thing. I think in a way it is. I mean, when it breaks down to it, if you're a lacrosse person, it's going to be, you're going to take it as a lacrosse thing. If you're a baseball person, you're going to take it as a baseball thing. But I mean, specifically, I think you're going to see over the next. This isn't going to be a 2 or 3 month thing. This is going to be a 2 to 3 year thing. These budget changes are going to stick with programs across. This budget cycle, and then probably the next budget cycle. It's going to be an interesting time, and it's a scary time. There are a lot of opportunities for young student athletes to play lacrosse at the next level, and I think that that's a wonderful thing, and I think everybody thinks that that's a wonderful thing. This is how I truly feel. I feel like the COVID situation is going to be used as an excuse by a lot of administrations in higher ed to cut things that they didn't necessarily want in the first place. I think that's what it all comes down to. That's unfortunate. I think, it's just going to be a tough situation all around. Everybody's going to have to be cutting budgets. You're going to see a lot of conferences basically tell their teams that you should play only conference games. I believe, what was it? The Division II, their maximum amount of games this year is 12 or 13. Division III, it's going to be 7. That's their actual minimum to keep their sports sponsorship. I'm sorry about that. That's the number 7. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some teams in Division III play those minimum 7 games. I wouldn't be surprised if, and who this really hurts is programs that are like on the fringe too. You look at a program like Whittier out in California. Those guys are building that program up, and it's been a special program for a really long time, but those guys are doing a fantastic job out there. Coach Marks and Coach Fox are phenomenal recruiters. They're phenomenal coaches. And, I believe that this year, the 2020 year, was going to be a huge year for them. And, even moving forward into 2021, they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. And they're taking trips to the East. They're flying teams out to them. How is that going to affect their program moving forward? How is it going to affect some of those fringe teams? I mean, you got Rhodes down in Tennessee. That's a team that's knocking on the door to beat some really good teams, some NCAC teams. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how this thing goes moving forward. I think that with kind of how the country is just starting to open up, I think you're going to see some, we'll see some clarity on things over the next, few weeks or month or so. But it's going to be dicey for a really long time. I mean, this summer in general, I was talking to a coach before, this is the first time in a really long time. Like, what are you doing? We're all, it's June 11th. We should be somewhere recruiting right now.
Yeah.
Instead, everybody's sitting at home.
Yeah. There's there's a silver lining to that. A lot of people are taking the time, using it for family, and it's nice and everything. And
which they should.
Talk to coaches about, they're getting to know recruits on a deeper level because they've got more time to spend on a smaller pool of recruits that they already knew before this started. And
it's this 5th year that they granted to everybody this year, or this extra year, so to say. It's not a 5th year for everybody. If you were a freshman, you got your freshman year back. Wow. Lacrosse across the board next year, Division 1, 2, and 3 and NAIA, because you're seeing some of those guys and gals that were playing at some of these other institutions that, found a home at the NAIA level. Lacrosse is going to be insane next year.
Yeah, the talent pool is the deepest it's ever been. I mean, you get guys like the best player from Lynchburg. He's going to High Point for his 5th year.
Charlie Bertrand's going to Virginia.
There's people all over the place taking advantage of that extra year. And, while it's less likely at some of the D3s, NAIs, especially, if they don't have the master's program or whatever, it is what it is. But for some of them, maybe they needed that extra semester to graduate, and now they can stretch that out into an extra year. Hopefully still be on that small scholarship at the NAIs and D2s. But,
while it's going to be a gift, it's going to be a curse in a way, because I've talked to some other guys that are going into their freshman year in college. They're not going to get 5 years. They're going to get their 4. And, they're showing up to a place that they thought they were going to have kind of a good situation going. And their recruiting class, where say they were coming in with 12 kids, now they're coming in with 18 to 20. How do you
Mhm.
find room for those guys? How do you find a spot there? So I think that, the kids that, obviously the high achievers are going to achieve. Some of the people that need more time to develop, you'll probably still that sample size might grow. They might need, they might not be able to find the field as quickly as they would have had there been less guys. So you might see, this transfer portal thing might blow up again next year. So you might start to
Yeah.
see more and more kids. I mean, you already are. It's just the nature of the beast. There are so many opportunities out there, and it's with the birth of social media and everything like that. A lot of these guys and their club teams, they're playing with all their buddies, and some of their buddies might go to another school. You can't sit there and tell me that a lot of these guys are getting pulled in a bunch of different directions, and if things aren't going their way, they find another place pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this whole thing will end up hitting the 2021 high school kids the hardest, because
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that are maybe getting to play real soon in front of coaches. That's the plan. I mean, you and I both live near Indiana. I've heard something like there's going to be 12 tournaments in Indiana this year
Mm-hmm.
because they're quote unquote open for
Yeah.
business.
Oh, they are. They're
And
open for business, man.
and you know what? That's great. And we'll see what happens with all that. I mean, I know a lot of coaches still won't make the trip to Indiana, even if it's the only place having lacrosse, especially some of those Northeast guys. They're just not going to bother.
Well, I think the thing, I was talking to a high school coach from Long Island today. So he's also coaches club, pretty good club, not a big deal. But they're going to Delaware like 2 or 3 times, and they're going to
Mhm.
Connecticut. So I mean, they're gonna get tournaments in. It's gonna be at some point you're gonna start to see this go back to somewhat of normal. But it's gonna be ugly. You're gonna see a lot of unhappy people.
It's going to be cutthroat for a bit,
Exactly. I mean,
more than it already was.
you're seeing a lot of unhappy people right now that they can't get there, that they can't get out on the field, and there's restrictions. For whatever reason. But it's gonna be an interesting summer, especially now that it's a dead period. It's a dead period for Division 1. It's a quiet period for Division 2. Division 3 doesn't really, it's kind of business as usual. The only restrictions that those might have are individual institution restrictions, but it's crazy. It's going to be a crazy, once things open up, middle of July, all the way through to September 1 is going to be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be, as much as this has been delayed for these coaches, a lot of it, it's going to come back, and they're going to do just as much work as before, just in much less time.
But how does this affect football? You're gonna have a lot of these guys, a lot of these kids are gonna piss off football coaches because first couple weeks of August they're gonna miss football lifts and do all that stuff, so that they can go to a lacrosse tournament.
I know that at least one, I don't know if it was NAIA wide, but I know at least one conference, they eliminated their week 1 game and they delayed their start time to mid-August.
Yeah.
So instead of coming back early August, starting camp, they delayed the whole thing about 2 weeks just to buy a little bit of buffer time. And then they're playing one less game this season. And I know I just saw Kaiser's football. I don't know why somebody retweeted it. And they're playing Weber twice this year to cut down on travel.
Gotcha.
So I think they're playing eight games this year, maybe 10. I got to look back at the graphic, but
I mean, how does that affect high school kids with their high school football coaches? I mean, how many kids are playing soccer and lacrosse, football and lacrosse? I mean, and those guys, once like it gets past a certain time, I mean, there's kind of like a silent agreement between those coaches. Like, okay, they're done with lacrosse. I get them for the football season. What's going to happen? Coach, I can't, and those football is a different animal. Their practice schedule is different. They do a lot more stuff on weekends. They might play on a Saturday, then have a practice on a Sunday, and then Monday's their off day. So now you're a kid. You're going to go to your football coach and say, "Hey, coach, I can't be here."
Yeah, I mean, every high school I've ever worked at, I think it's 4 or 5 of them now. The agreement was like last weekend of July was our last lacrosse tournament. Yeah. And yeah, you were going to workouts and stuff before that and 7-mans and whatever, but that was it. And then August 1, it's football season. But now, I mean, we've got tournaments into mid-August for sure.
Yeah, Under Armour just announced some of their tryouts. I think the Under Armour Midwest, their tryouts like July 24th. I think.
Everything's going to be pushed.
Yeah, or
It's
June
going to be
24th. I'm
chaotic.
sorry, I don't know.
I'm glad I don't have a high schooler to worry about.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's nuts.
So let's move on from that. So a little bit of current events, if you will, some big news. So John Posner, Culver legend, created a absolute powerhouse top 10 team every year, pumping out D1 recruits, pumping out NESCAC, NCAC recruits, just creme de la creme of high school lacrosse. He decides, and where do you end up going again? It's New Jersey, right?
I believe it's the Lawrenceville School.
Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't want to say it, but yeah. So he moves to Lawrenceville. Obviously, I'm thinking that's a family related quality of life. Maybe move back to East Coast. And who does Culver go and get? They get the college academy coach from VMI, John Bergner. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I think that's huge. I don't think they're going to miss a beat. I think, obviously Lawrenceville is going to get better. They were good to begin with, but I mean, with him as their coach, they're going to obviously continue to take those next steps. But I mean, Culver, I don't think is going to miss a beat. I mean, obviously it's a unique place, with kind of a unique situation. I mean, obviously there's the military, academy aspect of it. So I think it's a no-brainer. Yeah, he gets it. He understands. I mean, he was an elite player at Navy for Richie Meade. He's coached, he's served, and obviously, he was getting VMI to a point where they were in games and they were really young. And I think the issue at VMI is that they end up having a lot of turnover every year. They might bring in a big freshman class, but the retention is always a challenge for them, which,
well,
okay.
I've heard that from multiple D1 coaches that VMI is, without a doubt, the hardest school to recruit to in Division One.
Oh, I can understand, because it's a situation where you're paying to go to a military school, and I give those guys all the credit in the world. I think a lot of people, the draw there is that you can go into any branch you want. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that's a call. That's a calling, and I think the people that do that are wonderful people. But at the same time, it's such a unique institution. There has to be a certain type of individual that they have to recruit at, and he's done a good job there. So I think for him going to Culver, I think that's a home run. I think he's going to do great things there. He's going to continue to keep that thing going. I think it's kind of at the point now where it's selling itself, and that when you go there, you're going to get high level looks. You're going to play high level lacrosse, and when you step on the field, wherever it is at the next level, you're going to be in a position to be successful. I mean, to have a school like that where it is located, basically, churning out, national championships at the high school level, you're doing something special there. I mean, let's just talk about it. I mean, it's not in the MIAA in Baltimore. It's not, in the public schools or the Catholic League on Long Island, or those schools in upstate New York, or in Connecticut. These guys are doing it, and I mean, it's pretty astonishing with what they've done. I'm a little biased. I still think Long Island Lacrosse is the best. I saw you roll your eyes. That's fine.
No. It's top to bottom. I agree with you, but
that's fine. I know a lot of people out there won't agree with me, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. Take it. But he's going to do a wonderful job. I think that program keeps on rolling, and we'll see where it goes. I think just lacrosse in general across the board in the Midwest. I mean, from when I got out here in 2012, and I've made some other stops along the way. Across the board, it's gotten so much better. From where it was when I first got into college coaching and to where it is now. I mean, it's the level of athlete, the level of player. It's catching up, and it's already there, and I think it's only going to get better. But I've kind of gone off a little bit there, but I mean, for him, I think that's a home run. I think his job gets tremendously easier. It's going to be hard in a lot of different ways. He's going to have a different set of problems, but I think overall, I mean, it's probably going to be a better quality of life. I mean, you're not going to have some of the struggles from a recruiting standpoint. But I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, what do you think about it?
I think that Culver got the exact right type of person, and I
Hmm.
don't think there was another guy quite like John that could have filled that need. Where when you look at a Culver recruit or a potential recruit, and you show them Coach Bersner, like this is what you could be. Like if
Hmm.
you go the military route, like this is pretty much the best example I can find of a lacrosse guy, Navy, VMI, like you said. That's what these kids, and I mean, granted, a lot of these kids don't go to military academies
Yeah.
for college, which is fine. But now I think you might see that might go up a little bit. Maybe he's the one that says, "Hey, yeah, if you're not going to the Ivy League, you can play high level lacrosse at Air Force and
Well,
Navy,
let me
Army."
tell you something. Those schools, I mean, you find me three better coaches. It's going to be hard. Find me three better coaches than those guys that are at Air Force, Army, and Navy right now. Coach Amplo is phenomenal. Coach Alberici is outstanding. Um, it's to have, I mean, and while he's going to play football, to have a top 5 recruit in the 2020 class flip to go to a service academy, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal because
Yeah, for
it's
people that
still,
don't know who's that.
that's Xavier Arline. To
Yeah,
have somebody do that, that's huge. Um, so yeah, he's going to be playing football, but there's a chance he might play lacrosse at some point. But still, that's a win for their program. I think it's only a matter of time before Coach Amplo has those guys humming. They look pretty good this year so far. He's got some really good recruits coming in. So we'll see. But Army, I mean, Army was poised to have an outstanding year as well. I mean, and Air Force is always tough. Air Force has been like the thorn in Duke's side. They come to Durham every other year, or they meet in the tournament and they beat them. It's tough.
they've got a stable of freshmen that I'm
Yeah.
impressed with. So, but all right. So moving on, know what's going on at Hampton. I mean, their coach left to Amherst. I think that's a home run hire considering the background that Amherst had over the last apparently a few years. We only heard about it recently, but since he left Hampton, where's that leave that program? They had a huge commit in was it Jim Brown's grandson, right?
No, it's
And
his son.
it's his son. Okay,
Yeah.
so Jim Brown's son is going to Hampton, or at least he committed to. But then you see that one of their best players is transferring to Rutgers. So those two things happening at the same time. Him
Is it
leaving.
Rutgers or is it Hartford?
You're right, Hartford, red and white school. Whatever.
There you go. The Hawks.
Yeah, exactly. So one guy's going to Hartford. Their coach leaves. Is that a coincidence? Who knows? Hampton's always been on the bubble there, but I can't think of a better time for them to stick it out with lacrosse and really, make a push. But we haven't heard, that whole university when it comes to lacrosse, there's no info. There never was in the past. We were just flying blind,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm interested to see what happens there. I'm really,
I think it's going to be interesting as well. It's going to be great. I think it's going to be it has the potential to be a great landing spot for somebody. That's a great location. While I was at LMU, we actually went over there and played them. You could see that they were building to get that program better. The players were, you could see like the difference from freshman year to sophomore year and the recruits that were coming in. And I think Coach DeVoe was doing a great job to kind of continue that process and continue that progress. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they go. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a beautiful location, beautiful school, a lot of great history there. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens over the next few weeks, and it kind of goes back to our point before. We just don't know what COVID's going to do. I'm not sure if they're on a hiring freeze or anything like that. So who knows if they can even get somebody in there, right away. And then also too, what type of restrictions do they have on the institution with, who knows? Because some schools are, out in front of it saying, hey, we're going to be back in the fall. But some schools are saying, we might not, we might be doing distance learning again. And, the thing that nobody really wants to talk about right now is if kids aren't on campus, there's going to be no sports. And
yeah.
That's not a lacrosse thing. That's in everything.
I was in Ann Arbor earlier today, and they've been adamant that if there's no kids on campus, there's no football, which that's a big deal at U of M. But, if we're talking about equity and we're talking about what's right, not what we want to see, but what is right, that you don't get to just put those 100 people on campus because they're football players and let everybody else, work from home. So
Yeah, that's
not
going to
what we want to
be,
see, but that's what's going to happen.
I'd
And
love to.
I
Yeah.
think that they're going to lean towards, let's give it a shot, maybe do
Mhm.
some kind of hybrid model, but we'll see. And then let's talk about what we got coming up next week. So our plan is to bring on a guest that you know very well.
I
And
do. I
we
do.
didn't bring it up this episode, but we are definitely going to be getting into all of the topics that are coming up right now and that are really big. They've always been issues in the sport, but you're going to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, it's I mean, let's not dance around it. I mean, obviously we know what's going on with our country right now with the protests and everything that's going on, and what I will jump out and say is that we are absolutely 110% all for diversity and inclusion. I've always believed that sports are something that brings people together, and I'm a true believer that lacrosse is a medicine game, and I think it can bring people of all different backgrounds together. So it's something that's near and dear to me, based on where I came from and the school I went to. So we're gonna have a pretty interesting guest. I'm not going to give it away right now, but he's a current head coach, at the Division III level. He's a phenomenal person, and he's somebody that I know really, really well, and somebody that I consider family. And we're going to kind of go into this subject pretty deep, and we're going to get his feelings and kind of where he's at and what he's seeing around him. Because unlike us, we're kind of out in the Midwest, and it's a different situation. But this person's back on the East Coast, so it's going to be interesting to kind of hear what's going on around out there, and kind of get a different perspective on it, because it really is such an important topic, and it's a topic that, thankfully, and hopefully, it's something that we continue to talk about and we continue to address and make the situation better across the board, not just in sports but in life. It's such an important topic, and it's something that I consider near and dear to me, and something that I'm really looking forward to speaking about. I'm really looking forward to having an honest and in-depth conversation about it. And we're not going to pull any punches. We're gonna talk about kind of the nitty-gritty of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just wanted to put that out there because we wanted to dedicate, one entire episode to that and not have it just be kind of a cliff note or a small section of one episode. So we're going to keep that dialogue going throughout the foreseeable future. We want to be a part of the solution, and but the next episode will be dedicated strictly to that and nothing else lacrosse related, just that one topic.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's going to be a great episode. I hope everybody who's listening to this listens to the next one and brings other people on board, and that's kind of how this thing's going to grow. And we want to create a nice following, and the big thing too is as things kind of somewhat return back to normal, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. I mean, I look forward to the times when we're going to be able to talk about fall ball, and we can kind of shoot the breeze a little bit about what's going on in all these different schools, and kind of speculate a little bit on how the spring is going to look, and kind of talk about some of the upcoming matchups and things like that. So I promise you, at some point, we're going to get back to normal. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but we're going to get there. They can't keep us down.
All right. Well, that's it for episode 1. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you in future episodes.
Stay golden.